We are live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. It is night number 2 in Dayton, Ohio, to which we go dancing. The final night of the first 4 before Thursday and Friday, the round of 64, which really begins all the madness that we see in the 2024 men's NCAA tournament. It's Ben, it's Donnie, it's our coach, JY James Young, joining us here over these next 2 segments. We were live in person, all 3 of us together on Monday morning, following Selection Sunday. JY and I were there on Selection Sunday for our special to lead off Bracket Central, and now the coverage really ticks up, JY, just over 24 hours away from when the round of 64 begins.
I know that tonight is like the little appetizer, but folks, make sure you get your coffee, your Red Bull, whatever you need, and make sure, I'm a teacher too, I'm taking attendance, 12 o'clock, don't be late tomorrow.
We will not be late. That is for sure. All right, JY, many different angles now to look at the NCAA tournament. It's not just your bracket. It's not just your best bets in the round of 64 on Thursday or Friday. It's not just how you look at the path through the madness. It's which individual will be standing there at the end in Phoenix in a Final Four, leading his school to a national championship. And right now, the favorite to win the most outstanding player in the Final Four, his name is Zach Edey, and he stands at 7'4". He is going to win his 2nd consecutive National Player of the Year award this season for what they did during the regular campaign. But now it's Purdue's time to have their season defined by March, and it will all go through Zach Edey. Would he be, in your mind, JY, booked as the rightful favorite to win the MOP?
Well, listen, he's the most dominant player in college basketball. So if you think that Purdue's going to make a run and Ben has him winning a national championship, I have him going to the Final Four, then you think so. The most dominant player, that jump hook over the left shoulder is downright unbelievable. But to me, we've talked about it. It's going to be the guard play. Now, think about this. This guy was like a minus like $250 million to a National Player of the Year. But you see the odds are getting shorter between him and UConn. That's because of what UConn, it has more to do with the fact that there are multiple people on the UConn team that could win the MVP or most outstanding player, I should say, of the Final Four. So Zach Edey, well-deserved. But like I've said all along, folks, he needs help and he needs his guards to knock down shots.
And by the way, I look at that, and I think the pricing is correct at an 8-1 price. I would never bet it because I don't think Purdue is going to win the national championship in my mind. But then you're right, Coach. You're taking a look down the list. Other players here, there's multiple good guys here. Like if Zach Edey, put it this way, if Purdue wins a national championship, it's not going to be like, hey, man, Edey was terrible the last 2 games. 6 points and 7 points combined in the Final Four in the championship game. That's not happening here, so we understand it. But also, looking at the dominance that UConn is, also, UConn is the toughest region overall, and the embarrassment of riches. When you go back to that run, Coach, last year for UConn, like Klingon was coming off the bench because they had Sonogo in front of him. How talented that was. It was almost like, where did this team come from? So moving forward and looking at UConn, is Klingon going to be the guy? But I know how you think the same as me. Outside of Zach Edey, it's usually a guard-driven tournament. The big games come from the guards. The big moments come from the guards. Talk to us about here for some of the UConn guys to take a look at if you believe that they can cut down the nets with a legitimate chance to be the MOPs.
Well, if you really think about it, to me, it's got to be Tristen Newton. Why, folks? He's got the ball in his hands the most, right? They run the wing ball screen. The fact that he can get you many different ways, shooting a 3, driving the ball, leading the break, getting assists, getting rebounds. He's going to have an equal opportunity. And then also, folks, you have to figure this. It's got to be about how teams defend, right? So think about this. If they play Purdue in a national championship game, Klingon is not going to be the guy that's going to have to score for them. It's going to be the advantage of the guard spot. You look there. If it's Houston, Newton's got to outplay Jamal Shedd, right? So you got to look at it. If it's Creighton, it's calibrated. Those guys offset each other. So to me, it's more of a guard-dominated game. Purdue is the outlier with Edey, but think about it. When was the last time we saw a dominant big team that didn't have outstanding guard play not win the national championship? That's why I would not go with Klingon. I would go with Newton, unless the only big I would take would be Zach Edey.
Tristen Newton does it all for Dan Hurley's Huskies. He has had a triple-double throughout this season for Connecticut. In fact, that market moving just a little bit. Donovan Clingan has moved back by $1. He's now 12-1, tied for the second best number alongside Houston's Jamal Shead. $1 off Tristen Newton's price. He is now 13-1. Tristen Newton was named a first-team AP All-American yesterday, as was Zach Edey. In fact, it's Edey's number most correlated to the national championship price of his school. Purdue to cut down the nets, 7-1. Edey to win the MOP, 8-1, only $1 of difference. So let's keep looking at the All-Americans that made out the first team and where they stack up in the most outstanding player odds. That would be Jamal Shead, one of the leaders for this Houston team. The Cougs, the second best price to win a national championship. 12-1, the number on Jamal Shead. What does he mean to Kelvin Sampson's crew throughout this NCAA tournament?
He's the engine. And if you think about it, folks, when you watch Houston, first things first, they walk the ball up the floor, right? Secondly, they D you up in the half court. So to me, it's something you see on your eyes, Ben, right? What's the first thing you see with Houston with the basketball? It's Jamal Shead walking the ball up the floor. What's the first thing you see when the ball's coming the other way? It's Jamal Shead in a stance defensively. So he's the guy you're going to see the most out of a team like Houston. But I'm going to say this. If I were to take a guy on Houston, I think I'd take Cryer, because Cryer's got, when you see some of the games that Cryer has had this year, he has to go off, right? Because they need that secondary score, because sometimes Jamal Shead's shot is off. You think about how the game against Iowa State, they were all off. That 7-point performance, 3 of 12 from the floor. But then you look at some of the big games down the stretch, 25 points in that win versus UCF, 23 when he was unbelievable, Ben, in that second half versus Oklahoma, 22 versus Cincinnati. He's been the guy, probably, I say, since the middle of February, that's really been their top scorer. So to me, unless you want to split it and take both of them, which doesn't make sense, you just take them to win the national championship. If you ask me to take one guy, I think I'm actually going to take LJ Cryer over Jamal Shead.
For taking one guy from the University of Tennessee, it's going to be Dalton Connect here at the FanDuel Sportsbook, coach. Yep. 25-1 price here to be the MOP. So granted, if Tennessee wins, it's probably going to be on his back. And also, twice roughly in the last month alone, we've seen a 39-point effort and a 40-point effort out of Connect. We know it's deep there in the tank. Talk to us about Tennessee as a team and also the thoughts of Dalton Connect, who averages around 21 points per game here, but with the ability to elevate into the 30s.
Hey, I'm gonna start calling him Connect 3, because when he gets open and he lets it fly, he can shoot. And he can score in all different ways, guys. And he's been, let's be honest, he's been the best transfer this year. He's number one, and then probably Cam Spencer is number 2 in regards to the best transfers this year. And he elevates his team because of his ability to shoot it from 3. He shoots it nearly 40% from 3. They shoot 34.2% of his team. You look at some of the other guys, even Ziegler, second guy, he only shoots it at 35.2. So to me, you know, Dalton Connect's going to have the ball in his hands, and he could be the guy with all the studs that Rick Barnes has had over the years. He could be the guy that can lead them to the promised land of a Final Four. He is certainly capable of it, but here's the problem with Dalton. When he is off, they have problems. I know they got other guys, but look at some of the losses that even Mississippi State with only 14 points, shooting 23.5% from the floor. If Connect don't connect, Tennessee can't make a run.
It is a very good point. Zakai Ziegler is the point guard that orchestrates everything. He wasn't even in the big dance for the Volunteers last year due to injury. Tennessee has been to the big dance 5 consecutive seasons under Rick Barnes, but never into the Elite Eight, and only twice into the second weekend. Dalton Connect, for my money, is the best pure scorer and bucket getter in the field of 68. He won the SEC Player of the Year award, one of those members of the first-team All-American crew as designated by the AP. The other one was R.J. Davis, who had an outstanding year for North Carolina. So much veteran experience back for UNC. The big man down low in Armando Bacot. And then really R.J. Davis had a career year in Chapel Hill. UNC in the West region, JY. Very up in the air, very up for grabs. What does Hubert Davis need out of his star point guard to get to the promised land in a Final Four berth?
He's got to play like the All-American he's been. And it's interesting, folks, because to me, even though he scored 16.1, last year. He's been almost unlocked, Ben. Why? Because he doesn't have to share the backcourt and the ball with Caleb Love. And that's why his game, you know that Caleb Love slam that was coming at some point, but there it was. I'll do it really quick. But a guy like RJ Davis has been outstanding. To me, him and Baycott really give an inside-outside game. I'm going to repeat this. Kind of like what I said about Purdue needing the guards to surround Zach Edey. In order for Carolina to make a run in a West that is absolutely, I think Ben is going to be bonkers, he needs Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram. Those two must play well for Carolina for them to go. Otherwise, you're going to load up on RJ. Those two, if they're not hitting shots, Baycott keep them off the boards. It could be a quick tournament for the Tar Heels.
I think North Carolina is, as you would design an NCAA tournament team, a roster you would stare at. Armando Baycott down low. RJ Davis as one of the best scoring guards in the country. Elliot Cadeau, a great point guard facilitating things, albeit a freshman. Harrison Ingram is a guy that does everything. And Cormac Ryan can shoot the lights out of the basketball like he told the crazies inside Cameron Indoor at the end of the regular season. By the way, RJ Davis and Caleb Love tied for the 7th best price to win the MOP, both at 22-1. We go to Dayton, Ohio. Dan, next. Live right here on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid, like we did in studio on Monday morning, even if it is virtual. We run a little bit of a 3-man weave here to get you set for the second night of the first 4 in Dayton, Ohio. I am Ben. He is James. That would be JY, the coach, and DRS, Donnie, right side on the outside. So as we look at what has happened in Dayton already and set the stage for night number 2 and the ramifications after the first 4 as the round of 64 fully gets underway on Thursday. JY, let's go back to last night. I'm sure you have some thoughts. All of us had some assessments of what we saw in the nightcap between Colorado State and Virginia. 25-point win for the Rams. They easily cover as a 2.5-point favorite. Virginia scores 42 total points, so the total for the game of 120 in a hook stays well under. JY, if you could sum up your thoughts from last night's nightcap in Dayton, how would you do so?
I mean, that's how I jumped up. I mean, that was, listen, shout out to our guy, John Fanter, who had the tweet of the night. He said in the last, 14 minutes, Virginia scored as many points as St. John's, Seton Hall, Oklahoma, Indiana State, and Providence. Yeah, folks, that'd be 0. And that was just, it was absolute, we said it. The pressure was on Virginia, right? They were either going to show up or show out. Well, guess what? They didn't show up. They missed it all. They missed layups. They missed free throws. They missed jumpers. And this offense, the blocker mover we talked about, I was concerned with them if they got down because they don't have the personnel or the philosophy to speed it up. That's why you've even heard already Coach Bennett say, we may have to look at what we do. So to me, I thought it was going to be bad. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be that bad. I mean, that was embarrassing, and it was really a really bad look for the selection committee. They needed that game to be competitive, and they needed Virginia to show up. All the groans got louder and louder last night.
And also, Coach, you take a look at so many times in the past. We've seen teams in the first 4 like, oh, they shouldn't be there. I don't know why they're here. They got in by the skin of their teeth. Teams like UCLA, and even in the past, Ben's alma mater, Syracuse. A couple times they got in where people didn't think they should be there. But what do? They went on a run, won 2 or 3 games, and the committee's like, that's why we backed them here. So you sort of back off. Everybody's stepping up to the table. You're like, man, how did Virginia get in? We don't want to watch them play. And then they lay that clunker out there, which was ultra impressive here, barely being able to get into the 40s. But if we flip it forward here in the Midwest, you take a look at a team like Colorado State that did get that win. Coach, talk to me about this because I always like this. You're in the first 4 here. You won a basketball game. The nerves are already gone. You're traveling. Now you're looking to take advantage of some momentum. They're going to take on Texas coming up next. Could that be one of those effects where they picked up that victory, they're feeling comfortable, and you can knock Texas out and move forward? Talk to us about the team of Colorado State maybe getting to the Sweet 16 now, if that's possible.
I think, Donnie, you make a really great point. Sometimes you win that first 4 game and you've relaxed. you've played better. This is a matchup with Colorado State that they could win. They got guys who could score. And I thought their ability to run their wing ball screen and attack gaps and even run their Princeton stuff to kind of get Virginia moving, using the pass and the dribble to move the defense, I thought was really, really impressive. And it sets up a team in Texas, guys, that's getting healthy, but they're all over the place. Like, you don't know what you're going to get out of Texas on, forget a nightly basis, almost a possession-by-possession basis. So to me, I think Colorado State is the play to win versus Texas, just like the first four matchup tonight. I think it's going to have the advantage when they play on Friday.
2.5-point spread in favor of Texas. I'm still trying to find something that has allowed the Longhorns to be on the 7 line. I'm still trying to find something that Texas does really well. Isaiah Stevens, who is the best player for Colorado State, only had 5 points last night, and the Rams won by 25. Yeah. Nico Medved has a great team, and I think Colorado State wins that game outright. I'm going to bet the plus 2.5 and the money line for CSU, now the 10 seed in the Midwest region against Texas. So now let's move it forward to what we are going to see on night number 2 in Dayton. What a game it is. In the final game of the first 4, another Mountain West team, Boise State, against another team from the Rocky Mountain State. That would be Colorado. The Buffs won 8 straight games into the Pac-12 tournament title, came up short against Oregon. The Ducks stole a bid to the NCAA tournament. Boise State, in my estimation, strangely is in the first 4 because of the committee downplaying Mountain West teams based on conference strength and not non-conference strength of schedule, in which the Broncos had the 32nd best in the country this year. JY, I think the game is a toss-up. It's a 2.5-point spread in favor of Colorado. How do you break it down?
Well, if you look at like the metrics from Synergy, like points per possession, both offenses actually should have a little bit of an advantage. If you look at Colorado, they're 44th in points per possession. Boise State defensively 169th. You flip it. If you look at Boise State offensively, 82nd versus 169th. So to me, I think you're going to see points. You're going to see two teams that are evenly matched. And listen, both teams are far better at home. Now, they're not at home here because Boise State 15-5 at home this year. Colorado 17-3 at home. So to me, this is going to be a really good matchup. I think it's going to be tight, which means I think fouls are going to be in the end. I think the best way to look at it is I like the game to go over. Close game. Ben, I wouldn't be shocked if we get overtime tonight. I think this game is going to be extremely, extremely tight with fouls down the end, which means stop clock, more points.
Coach, if I'm looking at this game, I love the footprint on both of these teams on offense and also particularly defensive side. Both of them rebound the basketball. But if I'm looking at this game overall for myself, I do think we get points. But actually, Colorado, love the way they close the season. And also efficiency, top 25 in the country. If we're going down to what they do well, top 5 in the country at percentage at shooting the three-point shot, which is awesome. Now, that could get you into trouble because I know Ben likes BYU, and they're a great upset threat because they can make the three-point shot, and they launch it at an incredible amount of numbers. But if I look at Colorado, this is what I love from a coaching standpoint. They're top 5 in the country, close to 40% as a team at making the three-point shot. But how about this? Distribution, 323rd in the country, which means they don't force any three-point shots. If it's wide open, they'll take it and knock it down. And one thing we love as well, Coach, 78% as a team from the free throw line. If it's a close game, they'll knock them down. I'm just feeling Colorado, Coach, a little bit more than Boise State here.
And I think you make really good sense. If you look at Synergy and you pull up, they are all field goal attempts. They're 91st percentile in points per possession. And it's anywhere they shoot it. Now, here's a weird thing, is they don't shoot the ball well at the rim or mid-range. But you brought it up. 98th percentile at shooting the ball from 3. So that means if they get looks, that should be where they should get stuff. But then you start looking at the other side and Boise State. Well, how is Boise State defending the 3? This is going to be interesting. They're 90th percentile. So here's the thing. What Colorado does poorly, which is short to medium range shots, that is where Boise State is poor as well. But they're both pretty good at defending the 3 by the metrics. I do think you go by, at this point, who's playing better. You are right. The better team as of late has been Colorado. Yep. So Colorado should get a win in a great game tonight.
Boise State over in 4 of its final 6 games. Colorado on that 8-game win streak into the Pac-12 tournament title game. 5 games as a single-digit favorite. They covered in every one of those. I think Donnie's point about the effective field goal percentage for the Buffs, 55.6%. That's top 20 in the country. They have so many ways to score. They don't hoist a lot of threes, but when they do, they're the 5th best three-point shooting team in the country. I wanted Boise State because I think they got the short end of the stick in terms of how the Mountain West had their 6 berths into the NCAA tournament. And for whatever reason, the Broncos were looked at on a weak non-conference schedule and slated into the first 4. But I think I agree with the odds movement that now has the Buffaloes as a 2.5-point favorite. I will say this for the Broncos, 7 times in Mountain West play this year, booked as an underdog, both 5 and 2 straight up and against the number. The first game in the first 4 in Dayton tonight, the matchup of the 16 seeds where Purdue awaits in the Midwest region. Montana State, the unlikely champions of the Big Sky, knocking off their in-state rivals, Montana, in that tournament title game. But the Bobcats accustomed to the big dance. They have been here now 3 consecutive years. Grambling making its first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. And that 3.5-point number, JY, is no longer. It's a 4.5-point spread now in favor of Montana State.
And it makes sense. A Montana State team that's in the top 80, I think they're 76 and points per possession. But here's the thing, folks, I look at. They also, in possessions offensively, 274th according to Synergy. They take their time. They shoot the ball well, effective field goal percentage of 54.1%. They don't turn the ball over a lot. So to me, they kind of look like a team that will get the game at their pace. They will slow it down. And this is a game that they're going to kind of, if I would say, Ben, kind of chip away. Probably close at the break, slowly start to pull away in the second half. Montana State is the play here. They should be able to knock off Grambling. I think by the end of it, they'll probably be by about 10 points or so.
Trying to equate, 2 different conferences playing each other is always difficult at this time of year. It's why it's a lot of fun to see these matchups that we wouldn't see. But the one things that I look at, Coach, where I say to myself, really are a killer is, can you shoot free throws when it matters? Not really for Grambling State here. 250th in the country at 70% as a team. But more importantly, protecting the basketball. Montana State doesn't have a great defensive team, but they're top 75 in the country at turning you over from a defensive perspective. And a team like Grambling, 341st in the country at turning the basketball over. Coach, 21% of their possessions don't even end with the shot. It's a turnover here. I just can't live up to that. Also, just looking at Montana State on offense, the efficiency isn't really there. Not so much, but if you take a look at their footprint, decent three-point shooters, decent inside the arc, decent from the free throw line, it's got to be Montana State for me. Looking at this game overall, slower pace tempo for me. Maybe the rim's a little bit tight, Coach. I got to go ahead. I'm going to take Montana State here as well.
I agree, and I think that's the thing you look at is as teams line up, you want to find wherever you can find an advantage. Montana State shoots the ball from 3. They make their free throws, and they don't turn the ball over. That's a recipe to win games versus a team in Grambling that kind of throws the ball around the gym a little bit. So Montana State should be the play here. But listen, guys, here's the great part about March. We can talk all the analytics we want. It's 40 minutes.
Right.
We looked at last night. You look at last night's game, between Howard and Wagner. Well, Howard's supposed to be a good shooting team. It wasn't Howard. It was Wagner that shot the ball well from 3, shooting it almost at 50%. So we can talk all you want. Watch the game closely, folks, because everything is thrown out the window once they throw the ball in the air and start the game.
I also think when you look at the Ken Palm efficiency ratings, Grambling checks in at 267. Montana State, despite a down year, is closer in the low 200s, 209. A huge discrepancy. Yesterday, Howard and Wagner separated by about 10 spots. Both were the bottom 2 teams in Ken Palm into the field of 68. Now, Montana State, their former head coach, Danny Sprinkle, now in his first year at Utah State. But 2 years ago, they won 27 games into the NCAA tournament. Last year, 25 games. This year, just 17 and 17. But I think the Bobcats are just the better side. They do things offensively well. Nothing really in terms of offensive creation for Grambling. But in their first ever NCAA tournament appearance, as JY said, it's called Madness in March for a reason. JY, I'll see you tomorrow. We give you a best bet. Up next, live right here on the Early Line.